Hello everybody, welcome back to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel. I'm your host, Ari Stamatakos, and today we're back with another episode of Player Spotlight. Now, for those who haven't seen the first 4 episodes of this series, firstly, go back and watch them. They're all live on the YouTube channel. But secondly, this is where we take a look at some players on the fringes of the Socceroos squad or on the periphery of the squad and having a look at where they sit in Graham Arnold's plans heading into the World Cup in November. As you can tell by the title and the thumbnail, this episode is on Kenny Dougal, so let's get into it. So who is Kenny Dougal? Well, he's a 29-year-old defensive midfielder / central midfielder, so he's slightly older than some of the players we've covered on this series so far. He represented Australia under 23 level all the way back in 2015, so he's really had to earn his senior cap and really had to earn his stripes for Australia, being capped by the Socceroos 4 times, with his first cap being in 2021. He started his footballing career at Brisbane City before moving to the Netherlands, playing 4 years in the Netherlands across 2 different club sides before moving to England, playing at Barnsley before moving to Blackpool, where he has spent his last 2 seasons. Now, one of the big aspects of his game and one of the big notable points of his club career so far is that he has shown that he is able to play well in big games. Now, Blackpool were in the League One playoffs, not last season but the season before, and Dougal scored a goal in the second leg of the semi-final playoff, in which they won, before scoring both goals at Wembley in the 2-1 win for Blackpool, which secured them promotion to the championship for the first time in 6 years. So we've seen that he's able to perform in big games. We've seen what he's able to do at club level. Let's take a look at his player profile right now and just have a real good dissection of what he does on the pitch. Unlike other midfielders that we've explored in this series so far, he's much more of a defensive-minded midfielder and offers something different to the likes of Dennis Genro and Connor Metcalfe, 2 players we've covered on this series previously. As we can see from his heat map, he's much more of a defensive midfielder, and he likes to do most of his work behind the halfway line and being a real barrier for the opposition and acting as this defensive anchor for his team to build off and also for the opposition to try and get through. He isn't a traditional defensive midfielder in a sense. He doesn't sit in front of a back 4 and just occupy that area as much. He's more of an unorthodox central midfielder, playing slightly more defensive, but he does most of his work in a double pivot, being, like I said, the slightly more defensive double pivot or player in the double pivot, and he does more defensive work than offensive work. Now, he can play in a single pivot as well. He has done that at times for Blackpool and for the Socceroos. He does his best work being as a number 6, whether that's in a double pivot, in a midfield 3, or even as a base of a midfield 3, or alongside 2 other midfielders in a midfield 3, I should say. He offers a lot of tactical versatility, a bit of tactical fluidity as well, which helps him being able to fit into different systems. And he can also play in a 3 at the back system, being a third midfielder in a 3-5-2 or even a 3-4-2-1, acting as a kind of shuttler across the pitch, because he has the defensive capabilities and the engine and the tank to run all day. That's one of his big assets of his game, is that he has the running ability for days, can really see out 90 minutes to a pretty good level. Now, some of his key stats for Blackpool last season is that he had 2.5 tackles per game. That's the most for his team across last season, and he had just under 1 key pass per game and a 64% dribble success rate. Now, while on the surface of it, those stats don't seem extraordinary, what this shows is that he is able to have an influence offensively as well, despite most of his game being in a defensive nature and despite most of his assets being on the defensive side. If he's given time and space on the ball, and if he's given license to have time and space on the ball, he can really damage you as an opposition, as we saw scoring 2 goals in the League One playoff final at Wembley. I'm not sure the opposition gave him as much respect as he deserves on an offensive side of things. So Dougal is a little bit of a smoky when it comes to his offensive nature, but he does do most of his work without the ball, and he's fantastic at being a double pivot, single pivot, midfield 3, midfield 2. He can really do it all, which just offers so much versatility for whatever team he plays for. Now, we've seen what he's able to do at club level and what he's able to do for his side in England. Let's take a look at his Socceroos career to date, and we'll dissect the games that he's played for the Socceroos so far. Now, like I said at the top of the show, he has been capped 4 times for the Socceroos, and let's take his games in chronological order. He made his debut against Kuwait back in 2021. He only came on for the back end of the game, playing 25 minutes, and he didn't really have enough time to make an influence on the game, make an impact. The game was done, and there isn't a lot really to go off. It'd be unfair to judge him based off this game, although what we can say, he played at the base of a midfield 3, being that anchor to allow the other 2 offensive number 8s to really exploit the space in behind find this space in between the lines and acting as a real like triangle style, being the tip of a triangle between the two centre halves, and of course him being at the base of midfield. Now, his first start was against Chinese Taipei a couple of international breaks later, I do believe it was. In that game, he played in a double pivot alongside Denagenro. So we have covered this game before in the Denagenro episode, so go back and watch that if you want to hear his side of things for his for that game. But he played on the right-hand side of that double pivot, and like we have come to expect, he was far more defensive than Denagenro, but due to the nature of the game, he did have an offensive impotence to his game. Australia dominated proceedings and really had the lion's share of the ball, lion's share of chances. So what we can take out of this game is that when given the license to be offensive, he can take it. He created one big chance, had 2 key passes, and had a 94% pass completion rate. So these stats here show that yes, he is very good defensively, and yes, he is capable at playing a double pivot or playing a double pivot or at the base of a midfield three. But if he's given the license, like I've said, he can damage teams, and he is very capable at being an offensive verve for the Socceroos. His second start came against Jordan, and this is where he played on the left-hand side of a double pivot, and this is where you could see that his defensive side of his game really shone through here. He had 2 interceptions and 2 tackles, and he adapted well to the scenario of the game in which he had to kind of shuffle his position a little bit more and really allow his football IQ to take over. He has a natural instinct of where to be, how to position himself. That's another key asset of his game, is that his positional awareness is very, very good. And he got into some advanced positions on the right-hand side as well, despite playing on the left-hand side of a midfield double pivot. Having that adaptability and having that fluidity to understand where you need to be and understand where you can have the biggest impact is going to hold him in great stead come the future for the Socceroos and for his club side as well. And his last appearance for the Socceroos came against Saudi Arabia back in March. He played 4 minutes in that game and didn't really get a whole lot of it, so we can't really dissect that in a whole heap of detail. But let's move on and let's finish this episode with the future for Kenny Dougall as a Socceroo and take a dissection into where his future lies for Australia. Now, where does Kenny Dougall's future lie? Well, considering the difference that he offers as a slightly more defensive midfielder, I feel like the comparisons to the likes of Jackson Irvine and Jimmy Jago and even Connor Metcalf to an extent are slightly unfair in a sense. I don't think he fits into that category of midfielder. I think he fits into a category almost of his own, maybe alongside someone like a Cam Devlin, who I'm sure we'll touch on in this series in the future. But being a more defensive-minded midfielder gives him some space to breathe in a sense, in terms of there's not a lot of competition around him, and he could be a real smoky for the squad. If he's able to find some form for Blackpool in the Championship this season and really push them into maybe even promotion candidate and really allow them to make a real difference for that in that league, he could be a real smoky for the squad come November. Now, despite being almost in the same position as someone like an Aaron Moy, he offers something very, very different. Now, he offers that running capacity, that defensive mindedness, which will be very crucial for Australia if they're looking to see out games or be slightly more workmanlike in the centre of midfield. Now, he does offer a lot more defensively than Aaron Moy and someone like an Adrian Hustic. He is more defensive minded than someone like a Jackson Irvine. So it depends on what system Graham Arnold will be looking for. It depends what roles he wants his central midfielders to play. But I feel like there is a place for him in the squad at least, and even some starting minutes come the World Cup in November, depending on his form for Blackpool in the Championship. So yes, thank you all very much for watching another episode of Player Spotlight, this time on Kenny Dougall. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Leave your thoughts on who we should do a Player Spotlight on next. Make sure you subscribe to the Inner Sanctum YouTube channel, like the video. See you guys next time, and goodbye.